You know, when you hear the word fundamentalism, what comes to mind? For a lot of us, it's something ancient, right? A relic from a bygone era. But what if I told you it's actually a thoroughly modern thing? A direct response to the world we're all living in right now. So let's get into it. We're going to explore why this search for absolute certainty has become such a powerful force in our very uncertain times.
To kick things off, let me just ask you a question. And I bet a lot of you can relate to this. Does it ever feel like the ground is just constantly shifting under your feet? Like everything from our jobs to our values to our politics is just always in flux? Well, you are definitely not alone in feeling that.
There's actually a name for that feeling. Sociologists call it a key feature of postmodernity. It's this era defined by just relentless change. And we're not just talking about new gadgets, it's our economies, our politics, and maybe most importantly, our very sense of who we are. All of that can lead to this widespread identity confusion. So when the world feels this chaotic, what do people do? Well, a lot of us turn to belief for some kind of anchor. But here's the thing, that impulse tends to push people down two very, very different paths. Okay, check this out, because the contrast here is really what matters. On one side, you've got privatized religion. You can think of things like New Age movements, where belief is all about a personal inward journey. It's about finding yourself. But on the other side, you've got public religion. And this is an outward-facing project. Fundamentalism is the perfect example. The goal here isn't just to change yourself. It's about changing all of society, to create certainty for everyone. All right, so let's zoom in on that second path. What exactly is fundamentalism, and what makes it so darn appealing to people trying to navigate this crazy, confusing modern world? The sociologist Zygmunt Bauman gives us a really solid working definition here. See, it's not just about believing in something. It's about a super strict, rigid observance of what are seen as the core, absolutely non-negotiable beliefs of a faith. It's a very organized, very structured approach. And here it is, the absolute core of its appeal, the promise of certainty. Simple as that. In a world that is just full of gray areas and endless questions, fundamentalism comes along and offers crystal clear, black and white answers. It's like a solid rock in the middle of a swirling sea of confusion. So how does it do that? How does it deliver on that promise? Well, it's pretty clever, actually. It removes the risk by removing the choice. Instead of you having to agonize over some complex moral decision, it just gives you a clear, unambiguous rulebook taken straight from sacred texts. That fear of making the wrong choice, poof, it just vanishes. And you can actually break this down even further. Researchers Sahgal and Yuval-Davis found that these movements pretty much always have three things in common. First, they claim to have the one and only true version of their religion. Second, because of that, they feel constantly threatened by everyone else. Other beliefs, secularism, you name it. And third, their ultimate goal isn't just to influence their own followers. It's to control society as a whole, what people believe and how they're allowed to behave. And that last point, the bit about controlling society, that's huge. Because that's the exact moment fundamentalism transforms from just a personal belief system into a really powerful political force. Let's dig into how that works. This quote from Sahgal and Yuval-Davis just nails it. They argue that these aren't just religious groups. No, they're fundamentally political movements that happen to have a religious mission. And they are actively trying to use all the tools of the modern world, the state, the media, to make their goals a reality. So you can really see the political playbook here. It's about stopping social changes they don't like. It's about completely reshaping society to match their own worldview. And ultimately, it's about winning political power so they can extend their control over everyone. Religion becomes the engine for a political project. Okay, but why now? Why does this seem to be popping up all over the world in so many different religions at this moment in history? Well, ironically, a big part of the answer is globalisation. I mean, just think about it. The internet, global travel, social media, we are constantly bombarded with different cultures, different beliefs, different ways of life. And that can lead to this feeling called moral relativism, this unsettling idea that maybe there are no absolute truths, that everything is just relative. And for a lot of people, that is a deeply scary thought. And that feeling, that sense of nothing being solid, that's the opening fundamentalism thrives on. It comes roaring in with an incredibly powerful counter-narrative. It pushes back hard against all that relativism by offering absolute, unchanging moral certainties. It gives people a strong collective identity, a real sense of us, built on the foundation that our truth is the truth.
To really get a handle on this, sociologists have these two really useful concepts that explain how groups use religion, almost like a shield, to navigate a fast-changing world. First up, you have something called cultural defense. Picture this. A community feels that its entire way of life, its culture, its language, its traditions, is under attack from outside forces. What happens? Religion becomes a rallying point. It becomes a fortress to protect who they are. And this is a fantastic illustration of how it works in the real world. Take Iran back in 1979. The perceived threat was Western culture and economic exploitation. The defense, uniting the country under a shared Islamic identity. Now, jump over to the US with a new Christian right. The perceived threat there was the liberal social values that came out of the 60s and 70s. The defense was to push for conservative Christian values to protect a particular way of life. See? Two totally different contexts, but the exact same underlying mechanism at play. Okay, so that's defense. But there's another side to this coin, and it's called cultural transition. Now, this one's a little different. This is when migrant groups use their shared religion not as a fortress against a new world, but more like a bridge into it. Imagine a local church or a mosque that helps new immigrants find jobs and housing. It gives them a supportive community while also being a familiar cultural and spiritual anchor in a totally unfamiliar country. It's about using faith to adapt, not just to defend. So, where does all this leave us? It really brings us to one final and I think crucial question. Our world is only becoming more connected, more complex, and for a lot of people, a lot more uncertain. That pull towards the simple comfort of absolute certainty, well, it's incredibly powerful. So what role is that search for certainty going to play in shaping the politics, the cultures, and maybe even the conflicts of our shared future? It's definitely something we're thinking about.